The Wanderer drifted silently in the cold expanse of space, a ghost of its former self. Its once glorious hull, scarred by countless battles, now bore the marks of another narrow escape. The ship's once pristine engines sputtered weakly, leaking exhaust in plumes that faded into the darkness. The hum of failing systems reverberated through the corridors like a dying breath. In the heart of the ship, Bolt worked with frantic precision, his fingers moving like lightning across the control panel. As an android, his efficiency was unmatched, but even he struggled to keep up with the damage. The ship groaned, its systems flickering as if in protest. Come on, Bolt muttered under his breath, sweat beading on his mechanical brow. He adjusted a wire here, tightened a conduit there, each movement a desperate attempt to keep the Wanderer in one piece. In the dim, smoky corridors, the faint scent of burnt metal hung heavy, a reminder of their escape. The battle was over, but the scars it left would take longer to heal. Rin stirred in his cramped quarters, the dull, throbbing pain in his head, pulling him from the darkness. He winced as he slowly opened his eyes, the world spinning for a moment before it settled. His body ached, but it was the kind of pain that meant he was alive. For now, a flicker of movement by his bedside caught his attention. Sirif stood at the edge of his bunk, his expression as calm and unreadable as ever. "Dirin, you're awake." Sirif's voice was low, the usual edge of detachment softening slightly. "The ship's damaged. We're safe for now." Dirin's mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of memory. The last battle, the Dominion's relentless assault, how had they survived? His hand instinctively reached for the side of his head, as if trying to feel for any gaping wounds. "Pursuers?" Dirin asked, voice hoarse. "Gone. We lost them in the debris field, but they'll be back." Sirif's eyes flickered to the ship's status screen. "We need to fix this, fast." Dirin nodded, his thoughts still clouded with pain and confusion. What went wrong? What was lost in the battle? His eyes closed for a moment, seeking to regain control. A sinking feeling lingered in his gut, as if he knew this brief respite wouldn't last long. But for now, the pain was his only companion. A soft clank echoed from the hallway just outside the med bay. The sound of boots against metal, walking in rhythm, confident, deliberate. Dirin's brow furrowed. The footsteps were familiar, but it couldn't be. Not now. Then the door slid open, revealing the man standing in its threshold. Jace. The sight of him nearly sent Dirin's heart into overdrive. His pulse raced, but his limbs felt like they were frozen. Jace alive. He'd been dead. He had died during their last mission, an operation that had ended in betrayal. Dirin had buried him with his own hands, or so he had thought. But there he was, as alive as the day Dirin had known him, and just as dangerous. The tension between them was immediate, palpable. The weight of their shared past pressed down on Dirin's chest. He felt his pulse quicken, anger and disbelief flooding his veins. "I knew you were alive." Dirin spat, standing slowly. His voice was raw, biting with accusations. "I should have known. You, what are you doing here, Jace?" Jace didn't flinch. He simply stepped forward, his cold, calculating eyes never leaving Dirin's face. "Looks like you've got some catching up to do, Dirin. You've been a little busy saving your own skin, but now the tables have turned. I've got something you want, something that'll change everything." Dirin's hand tightened on the side of his bunk, his fist trembling. "I don't want anything from you, Jace. Not after what you did." Jace's expression darkened, but there was no hesitation in his voice. "You're wrong. I didn't just survive. I found something. A Dominion black site, buried deep. It's a project, one they've been keeping hidden. It's not just a weapon. It's something else entirely. Something powerful enough to shift the balance." Dirin's mind raced. He could feel the tension in his bones. A part of him wanted to walk away, forget he ever saw Jace again. But the rest of him knew they had no choice. This wasn't just a chance for revenge. It was the kind of power that could change everything. He stared at Jace, conflicted, as memories of their last mission haunted him. Can he be trusted now? Why now, Jace? Deeran's voice was low, his skepticism sharp. Why come to me now? After all this time, you've got a lead on a black site. So what? You want me to help you? No, you want us to help you. Jace let out a sigh, not one of impatience, but of resignation. I know you think I'm the villain here. Hell, maybe I am. But that doesn't change the fact that this intel is the only chance we've got. If you want to win this war, if you want to stop the Dominion from making a weapon out of that. He motioned to the cracked viewport, staring out at the endless void. You need this. Seraph, who had been silently listening from the doorway, stepped into the room. He's right. This could change everything. But we have to be careful. The Dominion doesn't hide things for no reason. Deeran's eyes narrowed as he processed Seraph's words. The implications were massive. Too massive. The stakes are too high. Jace wasn't wrong, though. If what he was saying was true, they were facing something far worse than just a galactic war. They were facing a threat that could erase entire systems with a flick of its proverbial finger. I don't trust you, Deeran muttered, his gaze flicking to Jace. But I trust that if we don't do something, we won't survive. Jace's lips curled into a tight, knowing smile. Then you'll do what needs to be done. The Wanderer's engines hummed weakly as the crew gathered in the command room. They were heading straight for the abandoned station, a dead zone of the galaxy where the Dominion had hidden its darkest secrets. The coordinates had been set, but Deeran felt like they were marching straight into the jaws of death. Something doesn't feel right, Bolt said, his voice tinged with caution. This feels like a trap. Deeran nodded but didn't answer. It probably is a trap, he thought. But what other choice did they have? Just as he was about to give the order, Seraph's voice cut through the tension. We're not the only ones heading there. The words sent a ripple of unease through the crew. The Dominion was already moving. Whatever Jace had uncovered, it wasn't just a black site. It was the key to something far worse. Then we don't have much time, Deeran said, his voice hard as steel. Set course for the station. We end this now, or we die trying. The Wanderer dropped out of faster-than-light travel with a quiet lurch, the stars outside flickering back into focus. Silence washed over the crew, broken only by the low hum of the ship's failing systems. The ship drifted toward the forgotten Dominion station, its outline growing sharper in the viewport, a cold, dark structure hanging in orbit above a dead planet. The world beneath was barren, a desolate graveyard that mirrored the station's haunted, lifeless form. Deeran stared out the window, his expression grim. He knew the legends of this place, but legends never told the full story. Officially, this station had been erased from history, wiped clean from every record. Its existence had been deemed a mistake, a failure too dangerous to remember. Yet here it was, floating like a tomb in space. Looks like we found the place, Bolt said, his voice betraying no emotion. The android's mechanical hand danced across the controls, bringing the ship closer to the station's eerie glow. It shouldn't be here. The records are clear. This station was decommissioned, erased. Deeran's jaw tightened. It shouldn't be, but it is. And that's what scares me. The crew gathered around, their faces reflecting the same unease. The station was a place of darkness, buried secrets, forgotten horrors. Deeran knew that whatever was inside would not be left untouched. But they had come too far, and there was no turning back. As the Wanderer approached the station, the outer hull flickered in and out of view, its once functional beacon now a broken memory. No signals reached them, not even a whisper of life. Yet as the crew began their scan of the station, something strange occurred. A pulse of energy, faint but unmistakable, came from deep within the station's heart. It was irregular, a flickering sign of activity where none should exist. It's not supposed to be alive, Seraph muttered, his fingers flying across the console as he scanned the station's systems. The beacon's dead, all the systems are offline, yet this pulse, it's like a heartbeat. Residual radiation, Bolt said, stepping forward, his eyes scanning the readings. I've seen this before. It's Dominion biotech. They use this kind of tech in their most secret programs. Whatever happened here, it wasn't clean. Seraph glanced up at Drin, his face unreadable. We need to proceed with caution. This station was wiped from the records for a reason. Whatever they were doing here, it wasn't something they wanted anyone to find. Drin's eyes narrowed. Then let's find out what they were hiding. The pulse came again, stronger this time, more urgent, as if the station itself was calling them closer. Inside the station's darkened control room, Seraph worked quickly, bypassing long-dead security measures with practiced ease. The data logs, long since corrupted and decayed, still offered fragments of forbidden knowledge. With each file decrypted, a chilling story unfolded, one of twisted science, of humanity's darkest impulses. Project Revenant, Seraph said softly, his voice carrying the weight of something much darker than the words themselves. They were making bioweapons, testing them here. Drin leaned in, his interest piqued, despite the growing unease in his gut. Weapons? Of what kind? Not just weapons. Seraph's eyes scanned a set of encrypted documents, decrypting them piece by piece. They were using prisoners, people, defectors, enemies of the Dominion. They weren't just testing biological agents. They were experimenting on the human mind, pushing it to its breaking point. Bolt turned away, his expression unreadable, and some of them didn't die. Seraph nodded, his fingers moving over the console like a piano player with an unseen audience. Some didn't die. They became something else. And the files, they don't say what happened to them. Just that they're still here. The room grew colder as Seraph's words sank in. The truth was worse than any of them had imagined. The Dominion wasn't just breeding soldiers, they were creating something far more terrifying. We're not dealing with weapons, Drin muttered, his voice thick with realization. We're dealing with monsters. Jace stood in the corner, his eyes reflecting the grim truth of their discovery. He hadn't spoken much since they entered the station, but now his voice broke the silence. It's worse than you think, Jace said, stepping forward. His face was hard, his jaw clenched. The Dominion wasn't just making weapons, they were using people. Prisoners, defectors, people they could dispose of. They were turned into experiments. Drin's eyes flickered to Jace, narrowing with suspicion. What do you mean? We've heard rumors, but you were part of this. You knew. Jace's lips twisted into a bitter smile. I didn't just know, I was one of them. They kept me here, locked in their cages, injecting me with their poison, trying to turn me into something useful. I was a test subject in their twisted little games. The revelation hit Drin like a physical blow. You were one of the prisoners. Jace nodded, his expression distant. I didn't have a choice. You think I left the Dominion because I wanted to? No, I left because I was discarded. I survived, but so many others didn't. Some of them, they didn't die. And now they're still here, in the dark. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. The pieces were falling into place, but the picture was too horrific to comprehend. Jace wasn't just a former soldier. He was a product of the very hell they were trying to expose. And if the rumors were true, some of those experiments were still alive, waiting in the shadows. Do you know where they are? Drin's voice was cold, but the tension in his eyes betrayed the conflict within. Could he trust Jace, the very man who had once betrayed him? Jace's eyes locked onto his, unwavering. I know, and I know they'll kill us if we don't stop them. We need to find them before they find us. The Wanderer's long-range sensors pinged with a faint signal, so weak it almost seemed like a ghost. A single isolated life sign was detected, deep within the heart of the station. The station's central core, an area so heavily shielded that no human should have survived there. Drin froze, his breath caught in his chest. The pulse had been one thing, but this, it was a life sign, human, or at least something that had once been human. We can't leave now, Drin said, his voice barely above a whisper. His instincts screamed at him to turn back, to cut their losses and flee, but his duty, his moral code would not let him. We need to investigate. If there's someone alive down there. Seraph glanced at him, hesitation flickering in his eyes. "We don't know what we're dealing with here, Drin. It could be a trap. It could be one of them." "I know," Drin muttered. "But we can't just leave. Not like this." Bolt raised an eyebrow. "And if it's not a person? What if it's one of their experiments still alive?" Drin didn't answer immediately, the weight of the decision pressing on him. If they were to survive, they needed information. They needed to know what the Dominion had done here. Whatever was alive in that station, they had no choice but to face it. "We move out," Drin ordered, his voice resolute. "We're going in." The airlock hissed as it opened, revealing the station's dark, decaying interior. The crew stepped out, weapons drawn, their steps echoing eerily against the cold, metallic walls. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the distant hum of failing systems. The stench of old blood and decay clung to the air as they moved down the narrow corridor, each step taking them further into the heart of the unknown. They passed rows of frozen bodies, each one a testament to the horrors that had been carried out here. Most were unrecognizable, twisted, mangled by the experiments. Some wore the insignia of the Dominion. Others had been someone else before they came here. D quote, Rin quote, S heart pounded in his chest as they advanced. The past lingered here, watching them, and he could feel its eyes upon him. A flicker of movement, just a shadow, a whisper in the corner of his vision, almost made him draw his weapon. "Stay focused," Seraph said quietly, his voice the only thing that cut through the tension. "We need to find the source of that signal." They moved deeper, unsure of what awaited them in the dark. The Wanderer's crew stepped off the airlock, and the stale air of the station hit them like a wall. The atmosphere was thick with the scent of dust and decay, a forgotten place that had been abandoned long before they arrived. Emergency lights flickered overhead, casting erratic, blood-red pulses across the walls, as if the station itself was trying to signal them, trying to warn them. The silence in the station was suffocating. Only the creak of the old warped metal underfoot broke the stillness. It was a place that had been long forgotten, yet the faint echoes of its past lingered, whispering in the dark. The crew moved cautiously, weapons drawn, their breaths muffled by the heavy air. They left in a hurry, Seraph muttered, his voice carrying the weight of 100 unspoken questions. But not everyone made it out. Drin's eyes scanned the surroundings, his mind working through the implications. This place was a graveyard, not just of the Dominion's operations, but of the people who had worked here, sacrificed to some twisted experiment that even the Dominion couldn't contain. They hadn't just abandoned this place, they had fled from it. The air was oppressive, like the station was holding its breath, waiting for something to emerge from the shadows. "Let's see what's buried in their files," Jace said, his voice low as he knelt before a control panel. His hands moved with swift precision, hacking into the station's systems. The display blinked to life, lines of corrupted code cascading across the screen. Despite the damage, Jace worked his way through the ruined logs, decrypting fragments of information that had been hidden away for far too long. "This wasn't supposed to happen," Jace muttered as a new log entry appeared. "The experiment was never meant to end like this. The Dominion never planned for it to go this far. The scientists, they were horrified by what they had done. They fled, but they couldn't contain what they created." Drin's gaze fixed on Jace, his eyes sharp. "What happened to them? Why didn't they just destroy everything?" Jace paused, his expression grim. "They tried, but it was too late. Whatever they had unleashed, it didn't care. The station's systems started failing, one by one, and those who stayed, they didn't survive." A low rumble echoed through the station's structure, as if something deep within was stirring. The walls seemed to close in, the sense of dread growing thicker by the second. They moved further into the station, the corridors growing darker and more twisted with every step. Ahead, a row of containment pods loomed, their glass fronts shattered, revealing the grotesque remnants of failed experiments. The bodies within were malformed, twisted into horrific shapes by whatever the Dominion had done to them. The stench of rot and chemicals filled the air. D quote, Rin stopped at the last pod, his heart pounding in his chest. Unlike the others, this one was still sealed. It hummed faintly, as though something or someone was still alive inside. "Is it human?" Bolt asked, his voice robotic. Detached. Seraph stepped forward, his eyes scanning the pod's diagnostics. His lips tightened as he read the readings. "It's a human signature, but something's wrong. It's not supposed to be alive." "Not after all this time." Jace, standing in the back, shifted uneasily. "That pod shouldn't even be here. The Dominion wouldn't leave a specimen like this behind, unless they couldn't control it." There was a faint movement inside the pod, just a shift, a twitch, but enough to send a chill crawling down Durin's spine. "They weren't just creating weapons," Durin muttered. "They were creating something else, something we can't even begin to understand." The next room was eerily quiet. An old security feed flickered to life on a nearby console, crackling as it restored fragments of a long-buried truth. The feed was corrupted, but enough was visible to make the crew pause. A group of scientists, their faces filled with panic, sprinted through the corridors. Screams echoed from the speakers as something pursued them, a shadow in the dark. One scientist looked back, terror on their face as the camera's image began to distort. The last thing captured was a guttural growl, a deep primal sound that sent shivers through their spines. Seraph, hands hovered over the controls, unable to turn away from the feed. They were trying to escape, but they couldn't outrun what they had made. Jace's voice was a low, bitter whisper. "You think you can outrun something that was never meant to be stopped?" A cold wave of dread washed over Durin. His instincts screamed at him to leave, to pull his crew out of this nightmare. But there was no turning back now. They had come for answers, and the only way out was forward. "Something survived," Bolt said flatly, scanning the area with his enhanced sensors. "And it's still down there. Whatever they unleashed, it's alive." As they continued deeper into the station, Bolt's sensors began picking up faint energy readings. It wasn't just the bioweapons that the Dominion had been creating. It was something far worse. The readings were unlike anything he had encountered before, too erratic, too powerful. "This wasn't just about weapons," Bolt said, his voice tinged with disbelief. "The Dominion, they were trying to merge human minds with something else, something alien." Seraph's eyes narrowed as he translated the final fragment of data from a broken archive. The message was chilling in its simplicity. "They are awake." A shiver ran down Durin's spine. Whatever the Dominion had tried to create, it was more than a weapon. It was an abomination, and it was awake. "Are you telling me they were merging human minds with aliens?" Durin's voice was tight with horror. "I don't know what they were trying to do," Seraph said, his voice grim. "But whatever it was, it didn't stay contained. And now it's coming for us." A shadow shifted at the end of the corridor. Too fast, too silent. Durin's hand instinctively moved to his weapon, but before he could draw, the lights above them flickered violently, plunging the station into total darkness. A single ragged breath echoed through the empty halls. The crew froze, every muscle tense, every instinct screaming. Durin's voice cut through the darkness, low and urgent. "Stay together, stay close." A metallic clatter echoed from behind them, followed by a distant, otherworldly growl. The sound seemed to reverberate through the very walls of the station, growing louder with each passing second. Something was hunting them, something that shouldn't have been allowed to exist. Bolt moved forward, his enhanced vision piercing the darkness. "We need to move, now." Durin nodded, his mind racing. The creature, or whatever it was closer now, and they were trapped inside its lair. With weapons raised, the crew of the Wanderer moved deeper into the shadows of the forgotten station, unsure if they were walking into a trap or into the heart of a nightmare they could never escape. The crew was moving carefully through the darkened corridors of the Dominion station. Every step felt heavier than the last, as if the very walls were closing in on them. The air was colder now, more oppressive. Each breath felt like it could be their last dot. Suddenly, a noise, a faint scrape against the metal floor, shattered the stillness. "D. Rin. S pulse spiked. Did you hear that? Bolt scanned the area, his sensors lighting up in rapid succession. Nothing on the readout. We're clear, but the silence held something unnatural. Then from the darkness ahead, a figure emerged, a monstrous shape moving with impossible speed. It was a blur of jagged edges and twisted limbs. The creature darted between the shadows like a predator, too fast, too precise. It was no mindless animal. It was calculating, aware. Durin, the voice that rasped through the station's intercom, was distorted, almost mechanical, but there was something familiar about it. It was a voice from the past. The voice spoke his name again, this time with more clarity, dripping with venom. Durin. The hairs on Durin's neck stood on end. His stomach twisted into a knot as the creature slowly stepped into the light. A figure he thought he had buried long ago. Someone he thought was dead. Someone he couldn't forget. Jace stepped forward, his expression hardening. This station, this was a battleground, he said, his voice low. The Dominion didn't just fear what the AI might do. They feared us. They feared humans becoming obsolete. Durin's gaze sharpened, disbelief flashing in his eyes. What are you talking about? Jace looked over at the creature standing before them, the horrible silhouette of their past. They didn't just create weapons, Durin. They created us. They wanted to prove that humanity could be more than just human, that we could be something else. And they did it here. Seraph's voice was calm but laced with dread. So this creature, it's not an accident. Jace shook his head, his voice faltering. No, this thing you're looking at, it was the product of that war. The Dominion feared that AI would make humanity irrelevant, so they built this hybrid, a monster created from human flesh, fused with alien DNA, enhanced with technology beyond anything we could have imagined. Durin's heart dropped, and they failed. They failed, Jace confirmed. But whatever they created, it never died. It's still here, and it's been waiting. A shiver ran through Durin. He couldn't escape the crushing weight of the truth. They were standing in the wake of humanity's darkest mistake, and now the price of survival was higher than ever. The creature stepped into the dim light, its twisted form barely recognizable. Its skin was grotesquely warped. Parts of it seemed to pulse and ripple, as though the very flesh were alive in ways that no body should be. But it was its eyes that stopped Durin's heart. Those eyes, familiar, haunted, held the same depth of pain and rage he remembered so well. It was human, or it had been. The creature's lips parted, and it spoke, its voice a low growl, tinged with bitterness. You left me to die. Durin's stomach twisted. He knew that voice. It was Jace's voice. The creature took a step forward, its movements jerky and unnatural, like it was remembering how to walk. The war, the pain, it had all been a part of this twisted existence, an existence that had been abandoned, betrayed by those it had fought beside. You remember? Durin asked, his throat tight. You remember everything? The creature nodded, its eyes burning with an intensity that made Durin's breath catch in his throat. I remember the war, the betrayal, the promises you made, and the ones you broke. The creature's voice dropped to a whisper, but it felt like a scream in Durin's mind. I remember you. Before Durin could react, the creature lunged. It was faster than any of them could have anticipated, moving like a blur of motion. The crew opened fire, but the bullets barely slowed it down. It twisted and contorted, dodging every shot with unnatural precision. Rin quote, his heart raced. It's adapting. Bolt's voice crackled through his earpiece. It's analyzing our tactics. This isn't a beast, it's learning. The creature's movements were fluid and deliberate, as if it had studied them. Every strike, every counterattack felt like it was fighting against a soldier who had never stopped training. Each punch from the creature knocked the air from their lungs, every swing of its limbs like a sledgehammer. Seraph fired his weapon, but the creature swatted it aside with terrifying strength. We're outmatched, Seraph shouted. It knows our every move. Durin felt the weight of the situation pressing down on him. They were fighting something beyond their comprehension, something that should never have existed. He swung his blaster at the creature, but it twisted sideways, dodging his attack, and retaliated with a vicious strike. The sound of metal crunching as his weapon was torn from his hands made his blood run cold. "This isn't a fight we can win," Durin muttered under his breath. Seraph's calm voice cut through the chaos, his mind calculating rapidly. "We can't win this, we need to retreat." "Retreat," Durin growled. "We can't outrun it." "No, but we can make sure it doesn't follow," Seraph said, his eyes scanning the station schematics on his portable display. "The reactor, if we overload it, we can destroy the entire station. Everything. But we'll need to buy time." Durin's chest tightened. "You're suggesting we sacrifice the station?" Seraph nodded. "It's the only way. We set the countdown, then we leave." Bolt chimed in. "You realize this means we'll have no way to track the creature. It could survive the explosion. It could come after us. We don't have a choice," Durin said, his voice hardening with resolve. "We don't survive this without a plan. Let's move." As the crew made their way toward the reactor, Jay stopped them. His expression was unreadable. "Go," he said. "You need to leave now. I'll stay behind." Durin turned, disbelief filling his eyes. "What? No, Jace, we're in this together. We get out together." Jace's gaze hardened. "No, you get out. I'll hold it off." Durin grabbed Jace's arm. "We're not leaving anyone behind." Jace pushed him away, his eyes filled with sadness. "This is my choice. I'm staying. I'm not letting that thing follow you." Tears welled up in Durin's eyes, but he didn't have time to argue. The reactor was primed, the countdown already beginning. "Buy yourself some time, Durin," Jace said, his voice thick with emotion. "Get them out." The door sealed behind him, the sound of a locking mechanism sealing his fate. Durin turned, his heart breaking. He had never wanted it to come to this, but there was no turning back. The Wanderer raced through the void, its engines screaming as they pushed past the station's atmosphere. Durin sat at the controls, his knuckles white as he gripped the wheel. Behind them, the station trembled, its hull cracking, the countdown reaching its final seconds. Then came the explosion. The shockwave hit them like a punch to the chest, knocking them all forward in their seats. The station's demise was cataclysmic, a burst of fire and light that consumed everything in its path. The vast station, a testament to humanity's arrogance, was gone in an instant, but as the debris scattered in the darkness of space, a single faint signal blinked across the Wanderer's sensors. Something alive was still out there. And it was waiting. The crew sat in silence, the weight of their survival heavy in the cold, sterile cabin of the Wanderer. The stars outside twinkled, indifferent to the lives they had just torn apart. The ship hummed quietly, a rhythm that seemed almost too normal against the chaos they had just fled. Rin stared at the starfield, his mind elsewhere. Jace's final words echoed in his mind like a wound that wouldn't heal. "Buy yourself some time, Durin. Get them out." Had Jace truly made the choice to stay behind, to sacrifice himself for them? Or had the creature, whatever it was now, what Jace had become, made that decision for him? Durin couldn't shake the thought. Was Jace still human, or had the Dominion turned him into something unrecognizable? The rest of the crew was silent, each lost in their own torment. Bolt leaned against the wall, his arms crossed, his glowing yellow eyes flickering with the soft hum of the ship's AI. Seraph stared into his datapad, his fingers absent-mindedly tapping at the screen, but his thoughts clearly elsewhere. He, too, couldn't escape the images of what they'd left behind. The horrors of that station, the screams, the twisted bodies, and worse, the knowledge that this was far from the end haunted them all. It was over, but was it really? Could they truly walk away from what they had uncovered? Bolt broke the silence first, his voice cutting through the thick air. "I've been analyzing the data from the station's final moments." His tone was detached, but there was an edge to it that made the crew sit up a little straighter. "Something doesn't add up." Seraph raised an eyebrow, glancing over. "What do you mean?" Bolt's fingers flew over the console in front of him. pulling up streams of corrupted Dominion data, fragmented and chaotic. But there were signals spiking just before the reactor exploded, unidentified, but deliberate. Something or someone was still monitoring the station, or us. The crew exchanged glances. A cold realization crept over them. The Dominion's gone, Durin said, his voice raw. They wouldn't have been able to stop us from escaping, not with that explosion. That's what they want you to think, Bolt interrupted, his voice low. The Dominion may have abandoned the station, but they were watching, they were waiting, and those signals, they weren't random. Durin felt his blood run cold. Then we've only just scratched the surface. Bolt turned his glowing yellow eyes to the crew. There's something else out there, something more. The Dominion wasn't finished, and neither are we. The tension in the room thickened. Seraph, who had been staring at his datapad in silence, finally spoke. I've been decrypting the last transmission we received from Jace. It doesn't make sense. Durin's heart skipped a beat. Jace, what was left of him, had sent a message. The thought of hearing his voice again was almost unbearable. Seraph played the transmission, and Jace's voice crackled through the speakers, distorted and urgent. They weren't alone. The experiment wasn't alone. There are more. They're coming. The Dominion isn't done. The voice was chilling, almost inhuman in its desperation, its unnatural distortion. The words echoed in Durin's mind, vibrating with terror. There are more experiments, more like Jace, more monsters like the one they had left behind. Durin couldn't process it. How could it be? The Dominion was supposed to be gone, but that voice, Jace's voice, was warning them, begging them to understand. They made it, Seraph whispered, looking up from the pad, his face pale. The Dominion didn't just make one creature, they made an army. The crew stood frozen in the aftermath of the revelation, hearts pounding. Jace was gone, but his message lived on. He had been their last link to what the Dominion was truly capable of, and now that link was severed. But the warning, it couldn't be ignored. The Wanderer drifted through the dark expanse of space, leaving the wreckage of the Dominion station far behind. The crew moved mechanically, as though on autopilot, each lost in the swirling thoughts of what was to come. They had escaped the nightmare, but what awaited them out there was anything but certain. The stars outside looked like a blanket of pinpricks against the infinite dark. They were small, cold, distant. It was hard to remember that humanity had once ruled this vast void, had once commanded this universe with a confidence born of ambition and creativity. Now, humanity was something different, something shaped by the unknown, by the mistakes of those who came before them. Durin sat at the helm, his gaze fixed on the distant stars. He couldn't help but wonder, what had they truly learned? What were they truly capable of? Durin, Seraph's voice was soft, almost too soft. The captain glanced up at him. You know it's not over, don't you? Yeah. Durin's voice was low, grim. I know, Bolt added, his mechanical voice carrying a trace of uncertainty. The Dominion might have been the architects of this nightmare, but it seems they've only just begun. We're not the only ones out here anymore, Durin, and whatever they were planning, it doesn't end with Jace. Durin looked out at the void, and for a moment, it felt like time had stopped. The crew had survived, but at what cost? What kind of world was there to return to when everything they had known had turned to dust? A message blinked on the console, a single signal flashing across the screen, another Dominion signal, faint but undeniable. It was a ghost, a shadow from the past, still hunting them. Brace yourselves, Durin muttered to the crew, his voice steely with resolve. We're going to find out just how deep this rabbit hole goes. The Wanderer's engines rumbled to life, the ship turning toward the unknown. They were no longer running from the past. They were charging into it. Somewhere out there, others like Jace remained, waiting, and the Dominion was still watching. They always would be. The journey ahead was long, and full of dangers that none of them could predict. But one thing was certain, humanity was not done yet. The Wanderer, a lone speck against the infinite backdrop of stars, slowly drifted away from the remains of the Dominion station. Its once towering silhouette had crumbled into a floating ruin, shattered by the explosion that had ended the nightmare. Yet even in death, the station had a certain presence. It hung there, suspended in time and space, an eerie reminder of the dark secrets it had harbored. Silence reigned, unbroken, suffocating, yet something about it felt wrong. It wasn't truly over, not yet. The void itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting. A sleek, unmarked vessel appeared from the shadows of the nearby asteroid belt, gliding through space with a precision that betrayed its advanced design. No insignias, no markings, just the sharp outline of its smooth hull against the backdrop of the cold stars. Its sensors activated with a hum, scanning the wreckage of the Dominion station with pinpoint accuracy. Whatever was inside that station, whatever had been hidden there, was not forgotten, and it was not finished. The stillness was broken by the sharp crackle of static, as a voice, low and distorted, came through the encrypted channels. It carried a sense of inevitability, a cold authority that could freeze the blood. Phase 1 was a success, the voice rasped, each word a weighted blow in the silence of space. Begin Phase 2. The words were an order, an announcement, and a chilling reminder that the battle was far from over. Whatever Phase 1 had been, it had worked, and now, they were moving on to something worse. The voice lingered in the air, a cold promise died. The Dominion station, it seemed, was never an isolated experiment. It had been the first step in a much larger, far more dangerous plan, a plan that went beyond mere weapons or bioengineering. No, this was something more insidious, more horrifying. They weren't just playing with human life, they were playing with life itself. The experiments, the monstrosities they had unleashed, were merely pawns in a scheme far darker than any of the crew could have imagined. The true objective of the Dominion had never been revealed until now, and that truth was far more terrifying than any of them had been prepared for. From the wreckage of the Dominion station, something stirred. It was slow at first, an unnatural creaking sound as if the station itself was alive, awakening from a long silent sleep. And then, from within the shattered containment pods, a faint, eerie glow began to pulse, not destroyed, not forgotten, watching, waiting. A single, unblinking eye opened in the dark, a terrible intelligence behind it. Something had survived, and it was only the beginning.